that is integral to success. If you look at like 2016, for example, Wolfglick won the World Championships with Raichu and Hitmontop, which were two Pokemon that weren't used very often throughout the course of the season, and they played very specific roles on the team that he won with. So similar in this format, it feels like now there are even more non-restricted Pokemon that are viable. Nao won the European International Championships, and that was something that was quite strong in previous formats, but I think we're actually ready to finally get into this one.
And here we are now jumping into team preview. Zheyuan on your left using the Salamence, Tapu Koko, Xerneas, Groudon, Bronzong, Incineroar, very similar to those really popular teams in 2016. Sohaib on your right using Incineroar, Kyogre, Rayquaza, Togedemaru, Tapu Fini, and Ferrothorn.
Yeah, so the classic Groudon versus Kyogre matchup here, Rayogre against Groudon Xerneas, so kind of a throwback to 2016, but there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. First of all, Ken is running the Bronzong variant. A lot of teams with Groudon Xerneas recently haven't really carried Bronzong, so the Trick Room option is obviously very viable for him, and if it is the typical Gravity Bronzong with the physical Groudon with Precipice Blades, then one of the strategies in this game might be to just set up Gravity and spam Precipice Blades. However, on Sohaib's end, he does have two water types which threaten the Groudon, and of course with Rayquaza and its airlock, you can always be able to just pivot in and switch in. So for Ken, I think being able to protect the Groudon, and obviously the Xerneas is going to be really important, but Sohaib also does have multiple steel types that we talked about. I think the Ferrothorn here can actually play a really, really big factor because the Tapu Koko, the Xerneas, and the Salamence, and the Bronzong, none of those can really do too much, and of course you do have to worry about the fire types, but when you've got Primal Kyogre on your team, one way, that's just another way you can actually protect Ferrothorn even more.
Yeah, so here we are. Both players have locked in their teams, and they are ready now to jump into Game 1 of this first round here at the Pokémon North American International Championships. I'm excited to see what both these players bring, Aaron. This is always just so exciting to watch high-level competition as we are now getting ready to see what the leads just are. It looks like Sohaib going to go ahead and lead with Incineroar and Tapu Fini. Over on Zheyuan's side, he is going to go ahead and lead with Salamence and Tapu Koko. So a very speedy core right there for Ken when you kind of expected that Trick Room with that Bronzong to be used versus Sohaib's much slower team.
Yeah, so Ken really has two options with this team, and it makes sense to go for... You're obviously going to go with the Tailwind option or the Trick Room option, assuming there is a Tailwind on the Salamence, but that's one of the cool things about the team, right? Groudon can actually function both in Trick Room and Tailwind. It's in that awkward speed tier where it can actually take advantage of both. Sohaib, on the other end, going with one of the safest leads possible in this format. Incineroar and Tapu Fini have so many options because they're both very, very bulky, often carry those bulky berries. Incineroar pretty much always gets a free Fake Out, and Tapu Fini is almost always carrying Icy Wind, so you can really slow the game down. So right now, Ken has a little bit more offensive pressure, especially because Tapu Koko, of course, could carry the Electrium Z, which can do a lot of damage here. But Sohaib here might just be content to maybe click Fake Out on the Salamence and go for an Icy Wind.
Of course, you also have to respect that Togedemaru possibly switching in, but that would put Sohaib at a disadvantage for only having one restricted Pokemon in the back. As Zheyuan now goes ahead and switches out the Salamence and leads into that Xerneas as Incineroar uses Fake Out on that Tapu Koko just to protect that Tapu Fini for now. As Tapu Fini going to go ahead and use Icy Wind to slow things down just a little bit, as well as getting some chip damage out onto the field.
Yeah, so that's one of the nice things about the Incineroar Tapu Fini lead. There are very few things that really can counter it very well, and the Fake Out until the Tapu Koko prevents any Choice Specs Thunderbolt or Electrium Z Thunderbolt into the Tapu Fini slot, so get some chip damage, but more importantly, you get the speed advantage. Ken here has brought out Xerneas, but one of the things that's a nice way to counter Xerneas in this format is Icy Wind. Depending on what Rayquaza set you run, you can just kind of chip off the Xerneas and then maybe put yourself in a position where Rayquaza can just get a big Dragon Ascent off against Xerneas. However, of course, Xerneas out in a decent position right now. Ken's got all the pressure in terms of offense, but he's still in an awkward spot because you don't want to just click Geomancy too early on against Tapu Fini because, of course, it can haze you at some point too. So Ken here might just be content going for damage. Maybe you just go for Moonblast. Maybe you Volt Switch with the Tapu Koko. Sohaib realizes I should probably finally get some offense out on the field, but switching in Rayquaza in against Xerneas and Tapu Koko, of course, two Fairy-type Pokemon, a little bit risky.
Yeah, could possibly just eat a very powerful attack right here and just get KO'd as Tapu Koko now using Nature's Madness. It is going to go ahead and bring Rayquaza down to 50% of its hit points right there. As Xerneas actually uses his turn to set up a Geomancy right here, just in the face of that Tapu Fini. It is currently going to be at 2 stages of increased special attack, special defense, 1 stage of increased speed because of that Icy Wind from earlier. So now this Xerneas is going to be extremely threatening. can possibly just get the KO on that Rayquaza as well as deal some big damage over onto that Incineroar on Sohaib's side. So very gutsy call right there from Zheyuan to just set up that Geomancy, as you mentioned, that could have been hazed easily as Incineroar now uses U-turn. Hitting into that Xerneas, not very effective damage, but is going to allow Sohaib to pivot.
Oh, that's a great turn for Ken, though. I mean, to be able to set up a Geomancy in the face of Tapu Fini and not lose your speed stat or, get hazed completely is a big deal there. We also see that the Tapu Koko has the Nature's Madness, and so it's probably a bulkier variant. That's a big deal, though, because now, even if that is Assault Vest Rayquaza, it should fall to a Dazzling Gleam or a Moonblast from Xerneas, and Assault Vest Rayquaza is really common, especially on these compositions. And so, and if it's not Assault Vest Rayquaza, obviously, it's just going to get KO'd by pretty much anything. So that's a really great turn for Ken, and the Icy Wind Drop, turn 1, was nice on Xerneas, but it is still faster than everything, and right now, Sohaib's End has Rayquaza, Incineroar, and Tapu Fini. None of those resist fairy-type attacks, and Nature's Madness is able to really chip things consistently. And Sohaib didn't bring either of his Steel types here, so this is going to be actually a really difficult game for him to win at this point because he doesn't have any way to really block the Xerneas, and the Xerneas just putting on full offensive pressure right now.
Yeah, and Kyogre is Sohaib's last Pokemon. It is going to go ahead and revert to its primal state. Of course, that brings out the Promoto C, which brings out a constant state of rain, but doesn't matter anyways because Rayquaza's Airlock is still out. Of course, when Rayquaza Mega Evolves, we'll just go ahead and bring that out, that Delta Stream, to kind of reduce its flying weaknesses. But again, it's not going to matter because it's staring down the face of a boosted Xerneas, and Sohaib did not bring any Steel types at all to try to resist this.
Yeah, I mean, if Sohaib wants a chance to win this one, you kind of feel like he maybe has to pivot in both the Incineroar and the Tapu Fini to fake out the Xerneas and Haze, but like Ken is just really content clicking Dazzling Gleam or even Moonblasts right now. And the thing is, Sohaib only has one real physical attacker in that Rayquaza. Incineroar is not going to do any damage, and so yeah, he is going to have to conserve it, and that's exactly what he's going for. But still, it's going to be really difficult for him to win because Xerneas is set up, and he just doesn't have free switch-ins. Right now, everything is always going to be taking consistent damage from something like a Dazzling Gleam, and if Sohaib doesn't get maybe a critical hit onto the Xerneas with the Kyogre, he's just in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, and Xerneas now uses Dazzling Gleam. It is going to hit both Incineroar and Kyogre, doing some good damage. As Tapu Koko on Zheyuan's side using Volt Switch into that Kyogre, as Kyogre hangs on with about 40% of its hit points, maybe 35% of its hit points remaining, allowing Zheyuan to pivot. Could switch in that Salamence, could reveal his last Pokemon as well.
Yeah,
but
probably Groudon here, you'd imagine, and you can't even get any Water-type attacks off, protecting Xerneas even more.
Yeah, so Groudon on Zheyuan's side takes the field. It is going to go ahead and activate its Red Orb again, or Red Orb for the first time of many times you can expect to see this animation today. So it is going to go ahead and bring out the Harsh Sunlight, not going to allow Kyogre to use its Water-type attacks, as you've already mentioned, Aaron. So it's tough right now for Sohaib because he just has nowhere to go.
Yeah, and Origin Pulse coming out. I mean, Ken is really just running a clinic in this game, and it really all goes back to the big decision to just Geomancy in front of a Tapu Fini. Not many players often do that. They'll kind of scout out for the Haze, go for a Moonblast, but Ken making that really hard read, and it pays off perfectly. Like, Sohaib now, of course, does have Incineroar, so he gets a turn to fake out the Xerneas, but I'm sure, you could really just double protect here to block out the fake out, and then Xerneas just keeps clicking Dazzling Gleam. So I just really don't see how Sohaib can really come back into this one. He's taking so much damage. He still doesn't have a way to effectively deal with Xerneas, and as long as Ken protects the Xerneas here, make sure it doesn't get any damage taken, then he'll be in a great spot. I mean, he doesn't even have to protect Xerneas here because Kyogre isn't going to be able to get any damage, obviously. Maybe you can actually just attack here. For example, Kyogre is pretty useless here because of the Sun, so yeah, you're going to have to switch it out or switch the Incineroar out back into Rayquaza, but that means you can just keep clicking Dazzling Gleam with Xerneas, and it did so much to the Incineroar. The fact that it did over 50% is actually a really big damage calculation there.
Yeah, Incineroar now uses Fake Out, just going to go ahead and hit that Xerneas, not allowing it to move, but of course Groudon is open to go for a Precipice Blades here, not intimidated at all. Going to go ahead and connect on both Incineroar and Tapu Fini. Big damage. Gets a KO on Incineroar. So much damage done to Tapu Fini as well. 50%. So really now, it's so hard because, the Xerneas is ready to just get as many KOs as it needs to with that Dazzling Gleam. I mean, Tapu Fini hits the field, but it's too late as Kyogre takes the field again. Going to go ahead and reset the weather. But again, Xerneas outspeeds that Kyogre, outspeeds that Tapu Fini, and Dazzling Gleam. And then if that Groudon follows up with the Precipice Blades, it's going to get a double KO right there. Rayquaza comes and switches in again and just gets KO'd by Dazzling Gleam. There's no way.
There's no way, yeah. Like, it was pretty much game over after turn 2. Like, Sohaib just did not bring the options to beat a setup Xerneas. Of course, Tapu Fini, one of the better answers against it, but as soon as you switch it out, like, Ken basically found an opportunity to set up the Geomancy. Of course, he did risk it there, right? It wasn't like that was like a free Geomancy for sure, because Sohaib could have had Haze there, could have, yeah, I mean,
even going for an Icy Wind again, just to neutralize the speed stat. So it looks like Zheyuan is going to go ahead and take game 1 in a commanding fashion. Sohaib just having to forfeit there, not realizing that, there was just nothing that he could do, and didn't want to reveal much more information.
Yeah, I mean, this series could really go a bunch of different ways. For example, in that one, Ken actually opted not for the Trick Room option, and it worked out really, really well. But that's one of the scary things, right? With Trick Room, it's a little bit more consistent, whereas with Xerneas, you're still playing the Geomancy mind games against the Tapu Fini, so that paid off for Ken, but I wonder if he's going to want to go with the same strategy again. However, that Tapu Koko actually looked really great for him as well, being able to be bulky, have Nature's Madness, which was able to do a lot of good, consistent damage across the board. That's really important. Silence wasn't even used, but of course you'd assume that there is potential speed control there for Tailwind as well. So, I mean, that was as dominating of a game 1 as possible for Kenzen. So Sohaib kind of has to go back to the drawing board, right? He does have 2 steel types which he could potentially bring to deal with the Xerneas, and I think Sohaib just cannot risk allowing Geomancy to go for free. Like, he didn't have any... He didn't cover the worst case scenario, basically, turn 2 of that last game, and that completely ended the game. So, like, I think the Pokemon he brought were okay, and like Incineroar, Tapu Fini are both really, really strong against Ken's team, and of course, obviously, Kyogre and Rayquaza, but he has to realize that he needs to distribute damage onto the Xerneas. Like, even if it's not hazed, it's still hitting all of those Pokemon for pretty good damage, and so for Sohaib, you have to go back to the drawing board. You have to consider, okay, do I actually maybe bring one of my steel types, or do I go with the same ones and just make sure that I don't let Geomancy go up?
At the same time, though, even if you bring those steel types, Togedemaru doesn't really have... It's not going to be dealing a lot of damage to anything over on Zheyuan's side, and Ferrothorn really is only there for the Xerneas, so it's hard to justify bringing Ferrothorn as your only, it's really there just for that Xerneas, which you might have to do in this case, but other than that, it's not going to be dealing much damage elsewhere. Yeah,
I think one of the tough things, too, is Ken actually doesn't need fire-type attacks to beat the Ferrothorn either, because there is the Nature's Madness on Tapu Koko, which is actually a really big deal, which makes it a lot harder to bring. I think if we didn't even see Incineroar in the last game, as Ken decided not to bring it, so if there weren't Nature's Madness on Tapu Koko, maybe I'd consider bringing it a little bit more, but the fact that there is means that even if Ferrothorn makes an appearance, it'll still be tough. So here we go.
Togedemaru actually makes an appearance here. Going to be partnered up with the Kyogre over on Sohaib's side. Over on Zheyuan's side, going to lead with Salamence and Tapu Koko, the leads that Zheyuan went with last game. So if it worked last time, it should probably work again, but Sohaib has made an adjustment, so it all depends right now. How much work can this Togedemaru put in to support Sohaib's side of the field?
Yeah, of course it gets access to a fast fake out here, so it can fake out either user, and Kyogre threatens both of these Pokemon immensely on Salamence. Any Ice-type attack like an Ice Beam or an Icy Wind, and Water-type attacks will still do a lot to this Tapu Koko. However, of course, Ken can pivot out into that Groudon and get the Sun up, but that's always a risky play to go up against the Kyogre, because if your opponent predicts you, then they can just switch out into Rayquaza and nuke the Groudon immediately. So I like the adjustment a lot by Sohaib here. Togedemaru obviously really weak to that Groudon, but if you're protecting with the Kyogre, then you're always threatening with the potential switch out into Rayquaza in the back. So Ken right now, still has a lot of offensive presence, but he probably doesn't want to just lose Salamence. Like, a fake out and Ice Beam will knock it out, and no electric type attacks will go into Kyogre. You can Nature's Madness, but I'm not sure it's worth trading, for example, Salamence for 50% of damage on Kyogre. So Sohaib here, at least at this first turn in the driver's seat, because he does have an option to click fake out, and, Kyogre has so many pressuring moves here.
Salamence switches out. Groudon is going to take the field. It is going to go ahead and negate the weather over on Kyogre's side, so it is going to bring out that harsh sunlight yet again. Trying to protect itself here, but, Sohaib does have options. Of course, that Rayquaza could switch in, but I don't think so, based on how the order of switching happened here. So, now the turn continues as Togedemaru uses Fake Out. It is going to hit into that Groudon slot, not going to have any effect except some chip damage, as Tapu Koko now using Nature's Madness hits into that Kyogre slot, bringing it down to 50% of its hit points. So Kyogre going for an Ice Beam, trying to hit into that Salamence slot, but instead just get some damage over onto that Groudon, which is still good damage to do. Actually, that's pretty good damage.
Really good damage, yeah. I mean, it doesn't do over 50%, but still basically trading damage on the restricted Pokemon there. So, obviously Sohaib had the option to switch into Rayquaza, but I think that's a little bit risky there. So, a nice play there on both players' end. I think going for the safest play possible. This next turn is going to be pretty interesting. We don't know the speeds between Kyogre and Groudon, so that is something that both players are going to have to be a little aware of. Of course, if the Kyogre is faster, you can just switch out into Rayquaza, but we're actually just going to see Kyogre Protect here, so let's see what Togedemaru does. Maybe a Super Fang?
Yep, as Tapu Koko now reveals Electro Web, it is going to go ahead and activate Togedemaru's Lightning Rod. It is immune. It is going to get a special attack boost, but of course, Togedemaru does have access to much more stronger, physical attack. So U-turn lands into that Groudon slot. Just some chip damage, but it is a great pivot for Sohaib. Possibly could have gone for some sort of action where Togedemaru went for a U-turn and then, switch into the Rayquaza to get the big Origin Pulse out. But instead, Rayquaza takes the field safely this turn instead. Rayquaza's still going to have to find a way to deal with this Tapu Koko unless Sohaib wants the Kyogre to just take some big electric terrain damage.
Yeah, that could have been a big turn to go for the water type attack, but because I don't think either player knows the speeds of their respective opponents, it makes it a little bit tougher. And the fact that Sohaib went for the Protector might mean that his Kyogre is a little bit slower. It doesn't want to risk just losing Kyogre, because if you lose Kyogre in this matchup, the game is pretty much over, because you won't have a great way to effectively deal with the Groudon. It's still definitely possible to win, that being said, but going for a safe play, but you're still in the awkward position of speed right now. However, Rayquaza is faster than Groudon and often will have a way to knock it out from this range, such as maybe like a Waterfall or an Earth Power. So Groudon threatened a little bit more right now. This Tapu Koko is obviously a big threat, but it's not getting knockouts or anything because it is a bulkier variant. So hey, pivoting out, the U-turn being a great move on Togedemaru. I think Salaman's a good switching here, but this is one that I think is relatively predictable, so we'll see if Sohaib read into this and maybe went for an Ice Beam into that slot.
Yeah, as Sohaib actually withdraws Kyogre, instead switching Togedemaru right back in, trying to soak up as much electric-type damage as possible here, as it looks like Mega Rayquaza is going to hit the field here, as it is definitely Mega Evolving at this point. Mega Rayquaza gets so many great stats as it Mega Evolves. And now the Delta Stream is going to go ahead and take effect. It is going to reduce the amount of super effective damage that flying types take here, as Tapu Koko uses Electro Up, just trying to slow things down a little bit here, as it actually weakens the attack on Rayquaza here. Not very effective damage dealt, but importantly, it lowers the speed, and that's why it's so important here, as Rayquaza uses Earth Power into the Tapu Koko instead, getting some big damage. Not even 50% damage, though.
That's so bulky. Yeah, I mean, that's got to be an Assault Vest Tapu Koko, which makes sense given all the moves that we've seen. But wow, that's really, really impressive bulk there. This has been a really interesting game. Both players have been kind of vying for positioning and been protecting their Kyogre and Groudons as they really should be. Salamence is out. Neither Pokemon here can actually really do anything to Togedemaru unless there's like an Earthquake on Salamence, but that's very unlikely. Rayquaza now is slowed down and it's intimidated, so won't be doing very much damage. So I gotta wonder right now whether Togedemaru has Nuzzle and whether Salamence risks getting nuzzled, because if you do, then the Kyogre will be able to actually outspeed it. That's a really big deal because you'll just be able to one-shot the Salamence. So even though Ken does have a little bit more offense right now, he can't really do too much with it. So Togedemaru has actually been putting in a lot of work, and it's been quite impressive.
And Sohaib now withdrawing Rayquaza, as Incineroar is going to take the field. That's going to be pretty big Intimidate on that Salamence. A lot of Salamence now do carry Double Edge just to get as much physical damage out as possible. So also provides Sohaib with some Fake Out support, as Salamence's turn just using Protect did not want to risk getting nuzzled at all. So Tapu Koko now using Nature's Madness. It is going to hit into that Togedemaru slot. It is going to bring down 50% of its hit points again. But of course, Togedemaru was not really the bulkiest of Pokemon, as the Nuzzle does land into that Salamence Protect.
Yeah, I like what Ken's going for, though. Like, he was in a kind of an awkward spot, but the thing is, this Tapu Koko is actually so bulky, and that Nature's Madness damage distribution is really important. We saw earlier how much Xerneas' Dazzling Gleam did to something like Incineroar. And if Xerneas gets set up now, it will be able to just effectively knock out Kyogre, Rayquaza, and Incineroar. And so I like the Nature's Madness into Togedemaru. It is quite bulky, but it's almost always going to be carrying that Assault Vest. And so that's a really, really great way to wall Xerneas'. And so Ken's basically setting himself up for Xerneas, which is surely his last Pokemon, and distributing damage around to sweep with it in the end game.
Yeah, so exactly what you mentioned, just really trying to get out as much chip damage as possible to allow Xerneas an easy setup to clean up, as Primal Groudon is going to go ahead and take the field again. Just switching here, just probably trying to take that possible Nuzzle here to allow Salamence to be safe and remain speedy, as Tapu Koko now using Nature's Madness, hitting into that Incineroar slot, 50% damage dealt to it, as Togedemaru now uses his turn to go for a U-turn instead of a Nuzzle. Going to be able to switch out and allow Sohaib to pivot, as Incineroar still has a move to make later on after Sohaib decides what to do here.
Yeah, but, you know, if it goes for a Flare Blitz into Tapu Koko, that's at least Tapu Koko out the way, but then you do allow for a free switch in into something like Xerneas, and so Rayquaza does come out right now. Let's see what Incineroar goes for here. This could be a really, really big attack. You know, a lot of Incineroars also carry the Z move, so maybe it opted for the Z move, and it looks like we're actually getting
a Z move here. Incineroar going to go ahead and use its Incinium Z to go for a very powerful attack. If it targets on the ground, it's going to be doing some pretty big damage.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting with these Z Incineroars because some of them like carry the Z move but still run a lot of bulk, and others opt for kind of give up some defense for the damage output. And we did see that this Incineroar earlier took a lot of damage.
Big damage on the ground. Hangs on with just 1 hit point remaining. Wow, what a clutch survival for Zheyuan's Groudon for his team. Just 1 hit point from that. Surviving that malicious moonsault with just 1 hit point.
Yeah, but I'm not sure he actually wanted that survival because now Groudon is outsped by the Rayquaza, so you're kind of in an awkward spot because you pretty much have to switch it out or let it faint, and that allows for Incineroar to potentially get a big Flare Blitz into that Tapu Koko slot, so kind of an awkward survival there for Ken. He'd probably have preferred a free switch into something back out like the Salamence. Now, you know, the Tapu Koko also doesn't have Protect, and Groudon is in threat of a KO, so he here might be content to just go for a free attack into the Groudon and maybe click Flare Blitz. This Tapu Koko is quite annoying for him to deal with, but yeah, that even though, you know, that's a hype survival, that actually doesn't hurt Sohaib that much, I think.
Yeah, so Groudon switches out here. Salamence switches in. Intimidate's going to be pretty big onto both Rayquaza and that Incineroar here. You know, Tapu Koko will probably survive a Flare Blitz at this point right now, but what is Mega Rayquaza over on the other side going to do? Tapu Koko using Nature's Madness, of course, just chipping everything away. It has done so much work and has not been removed from the field at all, as Mega Rayquaza now uses Dragon Ascent. It is going to go ahead and hit into that Salamence slot, doing some good damage, bringing it down to about 40% of its hit points. It is going to drop its defenses, but now Incineroar uses Flare Blitz here. Is it going to be enough to get the KO after that Intimidate on to that Tapu Koko? Big damage, but no! Tapu Koko hangs on. Wow, this Tapu Koko is doing so much work. Obviously, it's done, I think, enough, really. I think getting KO'd at this point is probably for Zheyuan's interest.
Yeah, no, that's one of the best uses of Nature's Madness Tapu Koko I've actually ever seen in VGC. Like, it's chipped everything to under 50% at this point. And so, once again, Ken's basically setting himself up for that Xerneas sweep in the late game, and he has put himself in quite the good position to do so. Obviously, everything is quite low on his end right now, so he's basically looking for the perfect position to bring in Xerneas. You don't want to switch it in because it's at risk of, you know, getting potentially crit by something, for example. The upside right now is that, you know, Rayquaza is still quite the speedy Pokemon, but yeah, this is an interesting spot because Xerneas should be able to just come out and sweep the game, and Ken is actually going to bring it in, not really afraid of a critical hit. It is unlikely to let a, you know, Dragon Ascent even get to go into that slot because Zoe might be more content to click Extreme Speed or switch out, and he opts for the latter option.
Yeah, Sohaib now switching out Mega Rayquaza as well. Togedemaru is going to take the field, does have access to Nuzzle, does have access to possibly going for a fake out next turn, as Salamence is going to reveal that it is carrying the Mega Stone. Going to go ahead and Mega Evolve, going to get that Aerialate ability. No longer does Zheyuan need to continue to pivot in and out those Intimidates, so Salamence now using Double Edge. Big damage here, not intimidated at all. Hits in that Togedemaru, quadruple resists with a critical hit, bringing Togedemaru down to just a couple of hit points remaining, as Incineroar now using U-turn, trying to pivot here. Chips away in that Xerneas, so now what does Sohaib have to deal with this Xerneas and this Salamence?
Yeah, I just don't think Sohaib has gotten enough out of his Pokemon, and he's taking way too much damage at this point to be able to deal with the Xerneas. Unfortunate critical hit there onto the Togedemaru, but regardless, right now he's in a spot where you can get a fake out here, but of course both of these Pokemon probably carry Protect, so you might just be content clicking Protect with both, and then Xerneas doesn't even necessarily need to set up Geomancy. More importantly, also, Ken has all 4 of his Pokemon, so as soon as Rayquaza goes down in this game, Xerneas will win this game. So Ken's goal at this point is to knock out this Rayquaza, and yeah, Togedemaru isn't getting damage off against anything, and the main thing is that Ken has the speed advantage. Like, Kyogre is going to be slower than Salamence and Xerneas. No Protect on either end here, though.
Oh, as Togedemaru now using Fake Out, making that Xerneas flinch, as Rayquaza going for an extreme speed here. outspeeds that Salamence, gets the KO right there, but of course next turn Xerneas can easily just go for a Geomancy. So what does Sohaib have planned here, as Ken now has to send out his 1 hit point Groudon, his 12 hit point Tapu Koko, or yeah, what's it gonna be?
Yeah, either way though, I'm not sure how Sohaib beats the Xerneas here. Maybe you go for like a double up into that slot with a Dragon Ascent and something like a Zigzat. Maybe you hope for a flinch. Otherwise, the Xerneas here will be content to just attack.
Yeah, just go for a Dazzling Gleam even.
Yeah, and we actually still haven't confirmed the items on the Togedemaru and the Rayquaza. So I don't know. I mean, like Xerneas didn't get Geomancy off last turn, so Sohaib is at least in it, but it is still just putting on so much pressure right now because Ken's distributed so much damage across the board.
Groudon protects itself as Rayquaza uses Earth Power, hitting in that Groudon slot, hitting in that Groudon Protect, as Xerneas now using Dazzling Gleam, gets the KO on both Togedemaru and Rayquaza. Rayquaza actually hangs on.
Yeah, so definitely the Assault Vest variant there on the Rayquaza, so Togedemaru maybe having a Focus Sash instead actually, but that was a great turn for Ken. I mean, Togedemaru wasn't even faster than the Xerneas there. A lot of Togedemaru actually opt to be a little bit slower because you do want to invest just across the board, and Xerneas here probably max speed as well. So that feels like we'll probably seal up this game because Sohaib just doesn't have any offense against this Xerneas once again. Yeah, Incineroar is out, but you can just protect this next turn, and then the Xerneas will just outspeed. I mean, Rayquaza will get a Dragon Ascent off. I think like Sohaib might be hoping for a critical hit Dragon Ascent on the Xerneas, but Ken here should probably just protect Xerneas this turn and then attack next turn. As long as you don't get free attacks off from the Rayquaza, then Ken should be able to seal this game.
Yeah, so Ken in just great position here. This Xerneas, he saved it for the end game, like you mentioned. Really just using Tapu Koko to just chip things away, 50%, allowing Xerneas an easier path. Doesn't even need to set up a Geomancy.
Yeah.
Just content with just going for those Dazzling Gleams, just doing so much damage. It's boosted by the Fairy Aura, but still, you know, a lot of Xerneas, they do try to get those Geomancies up, but here, Zheyuan not even needing it, as Xerneas protects itself here as we move closer and closer towards the end game. Groudon Protects does not work here, as Rayquaza goes for a Dragon Ascent into that Xerneas slot, as it protects, as Incineroar gonna go ahead and use Flare Blitz into that Xerneas slot as well, so no chance for a KO on that Groudon. Really just charging down that Xerneas as a smart protect from that Xerneas.
Yeah, smart protect, I think, pretty much had to go for that. Interesting decision to go for the double protect there. I guess if Sohaib crits the Dragon Ascent now into Xerneas, he actually can win this game, so I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. He does need a critical hit onto the Xerneas, and for Ken's end, you can't just click Geomancy because you'll probably faint to... I mean, you can just go for like Precipice Blades because Groudon should be faster. You can go for something like Precipice Blades Geomancy, but that's not like a 100% win condition. Not sure if Dazzling Gleam will knock out Incineroar. It really actually shouldn't, because when it was Geomancied earlier, we saw that it did just over 50%. So actually opting to conserve the Groudon here, bringing in the Tapu Koko. I mean, once again, like I do think you need a critical hit here on Xerneas if you
absolutely need a critical hit on Xerneas to be able to get the KO. Even then, I'm not even sure if a critical hit will get the KO. A lot of Xerneas do train themselves to be a little bit bulky. Kyogre takes the field here with a little over 50% of its hit points remaining. Going to go ahead and activate the Primordial Sea. Going to go ahead and bring out the Heavy Rain as Rayquaza now using Dragon Ascent. Is it going to get a critical hit, and is it going to be enough to get the KO on this Xerneas, who is so healthy? Big damage on that Xerneas. Xerneas hangs on, so that is unfortunate for Sohaib. Did not get that critical hit that he needed to try to, swing this game in his favor, as Kyogre gets chipped away by the Dazzling Gleam as Rayquaza finally faints. So Incineroar gets to take the field here, but of course with that Groudon switch earlier, now Zheyuan can just switch in that Groudon, make Kyogre absolutely useless if he even needs to.
Yeah, that was a really interesting turn actually, because Ken could have stayed in with the Groudon and just gone for Precipice Blades, but he didn't want to risk missing a Precipice Blades, and so he switched out. And Sohaib not going for the Flare Blitz option as well. Had he gone for it, he actually would have been able to knock out Xerneas. And if you knock out Xerneas, I mean, this game's actually really still not over, but now obviously you do want to conserve the Xerneas by going for a Protect. Like you mentioned, you can bring in the Groudon and bring the Sun up as well. But the main thing is I'm not sure Tapu Koko will actually be able to knock out either Kyogre or Incineroar because it is a really bulky variant. So yeah, Xerneas has to protect here. I don't think you can switch in Groudon, so you might just be content letting Tapu Koko down. But if he even
Incineroar
gets...
uses Fake Out, hits into the Tapu Koko! And Tapu Koko just faints from there, so Groudon's going to be able to come in with 1 hit point as Kyogre, realizing, hey, Groudon can come in using Ice Beam here. How much damage is that Ice Beam going to do to Xerneas?
Yeah, I mean, this became really, really close. That was a great fake-out target there, I think. Sohaib
realizing that, Xerneas is going to protect, yeah.
Yeah, and it ends up being pretty funny because earlier I was like, oh, maybe it's actually not too bad for Sohaib let the Groudon survive, but obviously, had it gone down, Sohaib would have been in a 2v1 position. This has been a really, really crazy game, and I mean, it might come down to who's faster between...
It could be a speed tie, too.
Yeah, well, but you can also just click Moonblast into Kyogre and Precipice Blades, so if you don't miss the Precipice Blades, then you'll win, but obviously it's never great to be in a position where you do need to connect with the Precipice Blades to seal up the game, but I think Ken's play is to do that because you don't know who's faster between Kyogre and Groudon. I don't think you can risk it, so better to just go for the Moonblast. No
Xerneas
protect!
uses Moonblast
no
here.
No protect from Kyogre.
Lands into the Incineroar. Just trying to get that KO right there. Does get the KO. And now it's going to be the Kyogre over on Sohaib's side going for an Ice Beam faster than the Groudon. Hits in that Groudon slot, so gets the KO, but now Xerneas probably going to be able to just go for a Moonblast into that Kyogre slot to try to get the KO.
Yeah, so Ken opting to target the Incineroar there because most Incineroars don't carry Protect, so you'll be able to knock that out, and Xerneas is faster than the Kyogre. So I actually like that decision a lot, instead of going for the Moonblast into the Kyogre end. The Kyogre did end up being faster. I think Sohaib was still pretty much hoping for a miss there. You would need the Ice Beam to... You would have had to target Xerneas, hope for a knockout, and hope for a Precipice Blades miss, but the way Ken played that out was actually really, really smart. Pretty much came down to a potential Precipice Blades miss, but it didn't even end up mattering because Sohaib targeted the Groudon. So really well played by Ken there. That was a great last turn for him, and wow, what a game.
Yeah, so Ken right there using Moonblast onto the Kyogre to get the KO, and Zheyuan taking it. He took game 1 in extremely dominant fashion. Game 2 kind of came down a little bit to the wire. You got to give props to Sohaib for trying to fight back. He almost actually brought it back.
He did, yeah. I mean, he assessed that, okay, Xerneas is the main threat. I let it Geomancy for way too free last time, so this time I've got to protect it